"Don't talk," the waitress signed desperately across the crowded restaurant. The millionaire CEO's life hung in the balance, and only she had caught the shocking truth. His trusted business partner was about to murder him. In the next 30 seconds, her decision would either save a life or end her own. The crystal wine glass caught the light as Sophia moved between tables, her practiced smile never wavering despite the ache in her feet. Table 7 needed refills, Table 12 was ready for dessert, and Table 3, the one with the 2 men in $1,000 suits, something was terribly wrong. Before I move deeper into this story, I want you to tell me where you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments. And if you're new here, please like and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next story. She'd been watching them without meaning to. 26 years old, 2 years waiting tables at La Bernardine, and she'd developed an instinct for reading people. The younger man kept touching his pocket. His fingers drummed against the white tablecloth in an irregular pattern that screamed anxiety. But it was his eyes that made her pause. They kept flicking to his companion's wine glass with an intensity that made her stomach clench. "More wine, gentlemen?" She approached with the bottle, noting how the older man, Alexander something, she'd heard him on the phone earlier, smiled genuinely while his companion's face tightened. "Please," Alexander said, his voice warm. Up close, she could see the exhaustion beneath his polished exterior, the kind of bone-deep tiredness that came from carrying too much for too long. As she leaned forward to pour, the younger man, Richard, Alexander had called him, shifted suddenly. His hand moved over Alexander's glass, in a motion so quick she almost missed it. Almost. The tiny puff of white powder dissolving into the burgundy liquid made her hand freeze mid-pour. "Actually," Richard said sharply, "we're fine. You can go." But Sophia couldn't move. Her mind raced, processing what she'd just seen. The powder, the nervous energy, the way Richard now watched Alexander reach for his glass with predatory focus. "I said we're fine." Richard's tone turned aggressive. Alexander looked up at her, confused by the tension. His hand was inches from the glass. Time slowed. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. She could walk away, pretend she'd seen nothing, keep her job, her safety, her life uncomplicated. But as Alexander's fingers wrapped around the stem of the poisoned glass, she saw another face, her brother Tommy, signing frantically from his hospital bed 2 years ago, trying to warn her about his allergic reaction, while the nurses dismissed his gestures as confusion. She'd been too late then, not tonight. Without thinking, Sophia's hands moved. Years of sign language classes, years of practicing with Tommy, all crystallized into one desperate message. Her fingers flew through the signs, praying Alexander would understand. "Don't talk, don't drink, danger." Alexander's hand stilled. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, locking onto hers. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other, CEO and waitress, stranger and savior, while Richard watched with growing suspicion. "Is there a problem?" Richard's voice cut through the moment like a blade. Alexander leaned back, his movement casual, but his eyes never leaving Sophia's face. "No problem. Though I just remembered, I'm taking medication that doesn't mix with alcohol." He pushed the glass away. "Maybe just water for now." The relief that flooded through Sophia nearly made her knees buckle. He'd understood. Somehow, impossibly, he'd understood. "Of course, sir." She kept her voice steady, professional. "I'll bring fresh glasses and water right away." As she turned, she caught Richard's expression, fury mixed with calculation. He knew something had passed between them. She could feel his stare burning into her back as she walked to the service station. Her hands shook as she set down the wine bottle. Eleanor, the restaurant manager, appeared at her elbow. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I need you to do something without asking questions," Sophia whispered. "Call 911, tell them there's been a poisoning attempt at table 3, and don't let anyone see you do it." Eleanor's eyes widened, but she'd known Sophia long enough to trust her instincts. "On it." Sophia grabbed fresh glasses and a water pitcher, forcing herself to walk calmly back to the table. She had to keep Richard calm, had to buy time for help to arrive. As she approached, she heard Alexander speaking. "Appreciate your concern about the company, Richard, but I'm not ready to sell my shares. We've built something special together." "You're being short-sighted," Richard replied, his jaw clenched. "The offer won't last forever." "Then it's not the right offer." Alexander's tone was mild, but Sophia caught the steel underneath. She set down the fresh glasses, deliberately taking her time. As she poured water, she let her notepad fall from her pocket, pages scattering across the floor. "I'm so sorry." She knelt to gather them, using the distraction to slip a hastily written note under Alexander's napkin. "He put something in your wine. Police coming. Stay calm." Alexander glanced down as she stood, his fingers brushing the note. His expression didn't change, but she saw his shoulders tense. "You know what, Richard?" Alexander said suddenly. "You're right. This is a big decision. Why don't we toast to possibilities?" He lifted his water glass. "To partnerships and trust." Richard's face darkened. "We already have wine. I told you medication." Alexander's smile didn't waver. "Come on. Humor me." The moment stretched taut. Sophia held her breath, still hovering nearby under the pretense of checking neighboring tables. Richard's hand inched toward his pocket, the same pocket he'd been touching all evening. "Fine." Richard raised his water glass with obvious reluctance. They clinked glasses, the sound sharp in the elegant atmosphere. "Actually," Alexander continued conversationally, "why don't you drink my wine? Seems a waste of a good vintage. I insist." The color drained from Richard's face. I'm driving." "So am I." "Well, James is." Alexander pushed the poisoned glass across the table. "One glass won't hurt, unless there's some reason you don't want to. Before you continue watching, drop a comment telling me where you're from. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss our heartwarming stories." The trap was perfectly set. Sophia watched Richard's mask finally crack, revealing the desperate man beneath. His hand moved to his pocket again, and this time she saw the outline of what looked like a gun. "You know," Richard said, his voice dropping dangerously low, "I really hoped it wouldn't come to this, Alex." "So did I." Alexander's response was sad rather than angry. 10 years, Richard. We built this company from nothing. Why? "Because you have everything." The words exploded from Richard like they'd been building pressure for years. The vision, the credit, the money, the perfect life. "My wife died 18 months ago." Alexander's quiet words cut through Richard's tirade. "Cancer. The money couldn't save her. The perfect life you think I have? It's board meetings and empty houses and wondering if anyone sees me as more than a bank account. So tell me, Richard, what exactly are you willing to kill for?" The raw honesty in Alexander's voice made Sophia's chest tight. She'd assumed he was just another rich executive, insulated from real pain. But loss was loss, whether you grieved in a mansion or a studio apartment. Richard's hand emerged from his pocket. The gun was small, easily concealed, but deadly enough. Several diners at nearby tables noticed and gasped. Someone screamed. "Nobody move!" Richard's composure shattered completely. "This is between me and Alex." Sophia's mind raced. The police should be close, but not close enough. Richard was unraveling, dangerous and unpredictable. Someone had to act. Her body moved before her fear could stop her. "Sir, please." She stepped forward, hands raised peacefully. "There are children in the restaurant. Whatever's happening, it doesn't have to end badly." "Shut up!" Richard swung the gun toward her. "This is none of your business." "You're right." She kept her voice calm, drawing on the same well of strength that had carried her through Tommy's death, through the nights of studying sign language books while working double shifts. "But I know what it's like to feel invisible, to watch someone else get everything while you struggle." Richard's hand wavered. "You don't know anything. I know you're hurt, angry, feeling betrayed." She took another small step. "But this isn't you. The man who helped build a company from nothing isn't a killer." "Stop talking." But his voice cracked, uncertainty creeping in. Behind Richard, Sophia saw Alexander's hand moving slowly, reaching for his phone. She needed to keep Richard's attention. "My brother was deaf," she said, the words flowing without plan. "He died 2 years ago because people didn't listen, didn't pay attention. I learned sign language for him, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't save him." Her voice caught. "But tonight I could save someone, and so can you. You can choose to stop this." "It's too late." Richard's hand shook. "I already... The wine... No one drank it. No one's hurt yet." She held his gaze. "It's not too late to make a different choice." The restaurant had gone silent except for the soft sound of someone crying. Sophia could hear sirens in the distance, getting closer, just a little longer. "Richard," Alexander spoke quietly. "She's right. We can fix this. Whatever's driven you to this point, we can work through it. But not if you pull that trigger." "You want to work through it?" Richard laughed bitterly. "You didn't even notice I've been planning this for months, too busy with your perfect life to see your partner falling apart." "You're right." Alexander's admission surprised everyone, including Richard. "I've been a terrible friend. After Linda died, I shut down, buried myself in work, pushed everyone away, including you. I'm sorry." The apology hung in the air. Sophia saw something shift in Richard's expression, the anger cracking to reveal the pain beneath. Richard's voice broke. "I worked so hard, gave everything. And for what? To watch you get richer while I scrambled for scraps?" "Is that what you think?" "Richard, you own 30% of the company. Your shares are worth millions." "Millions?" Richard spat the word. "While you have billions. While you make all the decisions, get all the glory." The sirens were right outside now. Through the windows, Sophia could see police cars pulling up, officers taking positions. Richard noticed too, panic flashing across his face. "They're here because of you." He swung the gun back toward Sophia. "You called them." "No." Alexander stood slowly. "I did, the moment I realized what you'd done. But Richard, it doesn't have to end like this. Put the gun down, please. So I can go to prison, lose everything. So you can get help, so you can live." Alexander took a step forward. "You think I have everything? I'd trade it all to have Linda back, to have a real friend, to feel something other than empty. Don't throw away your life over money that won't make either of us happy." Sophia watched Richard waver, the gun trembling in his grip. The police would breach any second. Whatever happened next would happen fast. She made a choice. Moving smoothly, she knocked over a water pitcher on the nearest table. The crash and splash startled Richard, his attention jerking toward her for just a second. It was enough. Alexander lunged forward, grabbing Richard's wrist and forcing the gun up. They struggled, both men grunting with effort. Sophia grabbed a heavy serving tray and brought it down on Richard's arm. The gun clattered across the floor. Police flooded in, shouting commands. Richard collapsed, all fight leaving him as officers surrounded them. Alexander stumbled back, breathing hard, his eyes finding Sophia's. "Thank you," he said simply. "You saved my life." "You saved mine too," she replied, though he couldn't know what she meant. Saving him had somehow lifted the weight of failing Tommy, had shown her she could make a difference when it mattered. The next hour passed in a blur of statements and questions. Sophia found herself sitting in the manager's office, a shock blanket around her shoulders despite the warm evening. Eleanor sat beside her, alternating between scolding her for taking such risks and hugging her fiercely. A knock at the door interrupted them. Alexander entered, looking older than his 32 years, but steadier somehow. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said. "What you did, most people would have walked away. Most people haven't lost someone because they hesitated." The words slipped out before she could stop them. His expression softened with understanding. "Your brother. You mentioned him. Tommy. He was only 19. She rarely talked about it, but something about this night, about him, made the words flow. "Severe allergic reaction at a restaurant. He was trying to sign to me that something was wrong, but I didn't understand fast enough. By the time I realized, his throat had closed up. I'm sorry. I learned sign language after. Stupid, right? Learning to understand him after he was gone." She wiped at her eyes. But tonight, it mattered. Tonight, I got to use it to save someone. It wasn't stupid. Alexander sat across from her. It was love, and it did save me. He paused. Can I ask you something? Why did you risk it? You could have been killed. Sophia considered the question. Because I've lived with the weight of not acting. It's heavier than fear. She met his eyes. And because everyone deserves someone who'll fight for them, even strangers in expensive suits. If this story is touching your heart, please take a moment to like and share. Have you ever had a moment where you had to choose between safety and doing what's right? Tell us in the comments below. The police needed more statements, but Alexander insisted on having his lawyer present for Sophia's interviews, ensuring she was protected. As the night wore on, the adrenaline faded, leaving her exhausted and shaky. Let me drive you home, Alexander offered as they finally finished. It's the least I can do. I take the bus, it's fine. Please, I need to know you got home safely, after everything. She was too tired to argue. His car turned out to be an understated Tesla with a driver named James who greeted her warmly. This is the young lady who saved your life, sir? This is her, Alexander confirmed. Sophia, meet James. He's been trying to keep me alive for 5 years now. You made his job easier tonight. During the drive, they sat in comfortable silence. Sophia watched the city lights blur past, processing the surreal turn her shift had taken. When they reached her building, a converted warehouse in the arts district, Alexander insisted on walking her to her door. 4th floor, she warned, no elevator. I could use the exercise after sitting in police stations all night. They climbed the stairs slowly, both drained from the evening's events. At her door, Sophia fumbled for her keys, suddenly aware of how different their worlds were. His suit probably cost more than her rent for the year. Thank you again, Alexander said. I mean it. You saved more than just my life tonight. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world, people who do the right thing even when it's dangerous. Anyone would have. No, his voice was firm. They wouldn't. Richard was right about one thing. I've been sleepwalking through life since Linda died. Tonight woke me up. You woke me up. There was something in his eyes that made her heart skip, but she pushed the feeling down. He was grateful, nothing more. Rich CEOs didn't fall for waitresses who lived in studio apartments and took night classes. I'm glad you're okay, she said simply. Take care of yourself, Alexander. You too, Sophia. She slipped inside, leaning against the closed door. Through the peephole, she watched him stand there for a moment before turning away. Only then did she allow herself to cry. For Tommy. For the fear she'd pushed down. For the strange connection she'd felt with a man she'd probably never see again. The next morning, Sophia woke to her phone buzzing insistently. Elena's name flashed on the screen. Have you seen the news? Elena's voice was pitched high with excitement. What news? I just woke up. Check your messages. Check everything. Sophia, you're famous. With growing alarm, Sophia opened her news app. The headline made her drop the phone. Heroic waitress saves tech CEO from murder plot. The article included security footage from the restaurant, showing her signing frantically to Alexander, the struggle with Richard, everything. Her name, her photo, even quotes from other diners who'd witnessed the event. Oh no, she breathed. Oh yes, Eleanor countered. The restaurant's been flooded with calls. Everyone wants to interview you. And Sophia? Alexander Cross wants to see you. Today. Alexander Cross? The name felt different with the weight of his full identity attached. She'd known he was wealthy, but Alexander Cross was legendary, the tech genius who'd built a billion-dollar company from his college dorm room. His assistant called, said it's important. Sophia, are you listening? She wasn't. She was staring at a text from an unknown number that had just appeared. I hope you don't mind. I got your number from the police report. I'd like to thank you properly and discuss something important. Alexander. 3 hours later, Sophia found herself in the lobby of Cross Technologies, feeling underdressed despite wearing her best blazer. The building was all glass and steel, reaching toward the sky like it had ambitions of its own. Ms. Martinez? A polished assistant appeared. Mr. Cross is expecting you. The elevator ride to the top floor gave her too much time to think. What could he want? A thank you card would have sufficed. This felt like more, and the possibility made her nervous. Alexander's office was surprisingly warm, books everywhere, photos of mountains and oceans, a well-worn leather couch that suggested he spent nights here. He stood when she entered, and she was struck again by how tired he looked beneath the polish. "Thank you for coming." He gestured to a seating area by windows that showcased the entire city. "Can I get you anything? Coffee? Tea? I'm fine." She perched on the edge of a chair. "Mr. Cross, Alexander, please." He sat across from her, leaning forward. "I'll get straight to the point. Last night you mentioned taking night classes, sign language. Among other things, I'm working toward a degree in special education. While waiting tables, bills don't pay themselves." She kept her tone light, but he caught the edge. "No, they don't." He studied her. "I've been thinking all night about what you said, about your brother, about acting when it matters. I want to propose something." Here it comes, she thought. The reward money, the charity donation in her name, the gestures rich people made to feel better about inequality. "I want to hire you." That wasn't what she'd expected. "I have a job. As my personal interpreter and liaison for a new project." He stood, pacing to the window. 6 months ago, I started developing technology to help deaf and hard of hearing individuals interact more seamlessly with the digital world. Real-time translation, visual alerts, communication aids, but I've been doing it from the outside, making assumptions about what people need. He turned back to her. "I need someone who understands the community, someone who's lived with the challenges, someone who learned sign language not for a resume, but for love." Sophia's breath caught. "You're offering me a job because I saved your life. I'm offering you a job because you're exactly what this project needs. The fact that you saved my life just made me pay attention." He returned to his seat. "Full salary, benefits, flexible hours so you can finish your degree. You'd be making a real difference, Sophia. Helping create tools that could prevent what happened to Tommy from happening to others." The use of her brother's name made her flinch. Don't use him to manipulate me." "I'm not manipulating, I'm being honest." His gaze was direct. "I've spent 18 months building walls, hiding from anything that mattered. Last night broke something open in me. I want to do work that means something again. I think you do too. And if I say no, then I thank you again for saving my life, and you never hear from me unless you need something." He pulled out a card. "But I hope you'll at least think about it." Sophia took the card, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." She stood to leave, but paused at the door. "Can I ask you something? Last night when I signed to you, did you really understand or did you just guess?" A small smile touched his lips. "My college roommate was deaf. I learned basic ASL years ago. I'm rusty, but your message was clear." His expression grew serious. "You took an incredible risk assuming I'd understand. Sometimes we have to trust that the universe puts us where we need to be." She left him standing there, looking thoughtful. In the elevator, she studied his card. The salary he'd mentioned was 3 times what she made waiting tables, enough to finish school without double shifts, enough to maybe, finally, exhale. But it was more than money drawing her back to the idea. It was the project itself, the chance to help create something that might have saved Tommy, the opportunity to turn her grief into purpose, and if she was honest, it was him too. The way he'd looked at her, not with pity or mere gratitude, but with recognition, like he saw past the uniform to who she really was. That evening she called the number on the card. "I have conditions," she said when he answered. "I'm listening." "I finish my shifts at the restaurant through the end of the week. They deserve notice, and I want to be involved in the actual development, not just translating. I want my input to matter." "Done. What else?" I'm not taking this job because you feel obligated. We're clear on that?" "Crystal clear. This is business, Sophia. Important business." But something in his voice suggested it might be more than that, something that made her pulse quicken with possibility. "Then I'll see you Monday. I'm looking forward to it." After she hung up, Sophia sat in her tiny apartment, staring at the photo of Tommy on her bookshelf. "I'm going to help people like you," she whispered. "I'm going to make sure they're heard." The photo smiled back, frozen in time, but somehow approving. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled with promise. Everything was about to change. Her first day at Cross Technologies was overwhelming. The team Alexander had assembled was brilliant. Engineers, designers, advocates from the deaf community. But they'd been spinning their wheels, creating in a vacuum. "The problem," Alexander explained in their first meeting, "is that we're designing for a community instead of with them. Sophia's going to help us bridge that gap." She felt the weight of skeptical stares. Who was this waitress to guide their million-dollar project? But Alexander's faith in her was unwavering, and slowly she found her voice. "The alert system you've designed assumes people are always looking at their devices," she said, studying their prototype. "But what about peripheral notifications, vibration patterns that could indicate different types of alerts?" "That's actually brilliant," one of the engineers admitted. Within weeks, she was integral to the team. Her insights, born from years of watching Tommy navigate a hearing world, transformed their approach. But it was the late evenings that became special, when the office emptied and it was just her and Alexander, reviewing code and sharing stories. "Linda would have loved this project," he said one night, showing her a photo on his phone. His wife had been beautiful, with kind eyes and a warm smile. "She was always pushing me to use the company for more than profit." "She sounds wonderful." "She was. I shut down after she died, threw myself into work, but not work that mattered. Just motion." He looked at her. "You changed that. You changed yourself. I just held up a sign." He laughed, and she realized how much she'd come to love that sound. Somewhere between code reviews and coffee runs, between strategy sessions and shared takeout dinners, she'd started falling for him. It was terrifying and exhilarating, and absolutely impossible. He was her boss. He was still grieving. He was so far out of her league they weren't even playing the same sport. But sometimes she caught him looking at her with something that wasn't professional interest. Sometimes their hands brushed over keyboards, and neither pulled away immediately. Sometimes the air between them crackled with possibility. If you're enjoying this story of unexpected connection and second chances, please hit that like button and subscribe. Love often finds us in the most unexpected ways. Share your own story of unexpected love in the comments. 2 months into the project, they had their first major breakthrough. The prototype worked, really worked. The team celebrated with champagne in the conference room, but Sophia slipped away to the roof garden, needing air. Alexander found her there, city lights spread below them like scattered diamonds. "You're missing your party," he said, joining her at the railing. "It's not my party. It's the team's success. The team that you transformed. The project that has direction because of you." He turned to face her. "Why do you do that? Deflect credit?" "I'm just doing my job." "No." His voice was intense. "You're doing so much more than that. You're healing something in this company. In me." The air between them shifted, charged with unspoken words. Sophia's heart raced as he stepped closer. "Alexander, I know." He stopped just out of reach. "I know all the reasons this is complicated, but Sophia, don't." She pressed her fingers to his lips, stopping words that couldn't be taken back. "Not yet. Not while I work for you. Not while we're both still figuring out who we are after loss." He caught her hand, holding it against his face. "Then when? When it's right. When it's not about gratitude or proximity or shared grief." She pulled away, though it cost her. "When it's just about us." He nodded slowly. "You're right. You're always right." A rueful smile. "But Sophia..." "I'll wait, however long it takes." The promise hung between them, a future postponed but not denied. They returned to the party, to the team, to the work that mattered. But something had shifted, acknowledged and set aside until its time. The project launched 3 months later to incredible response. The technology they'd created was revolutionary, but more than that, it was human. It understood the community it served because it had been shaped by someone who loved that community. At the launch gala, Sophia wore a dress she'd splurged on, feeling almost comfortable among the tech elite and investors. She was giving a demonstration of the system when she saw a familiar face in the crowd, Mrs. Chen, Tommy's favorite teacher from the deaf school. "Sophia, is this your work?" The older woman's eyes were bright with tears as she watched the demonstration. Tommy would be so proud, so very proud. "I hope so." Sophia's voice caught. "I did it for him, all of it." "No." Mrs. Chen signed as she spoke, including the deaf students she'd brought to the event. "You did it for all of them and for yourself. He's watching, you know, cheering you on." As Mrs. Chen moved away with her students, all eagerly testing the technology, Alexander appeared at Sophia's elbow. "You okay?" "Yeah." She wiped at her eyes. "Just full circle moments, you know." "I do." He handed her a champagne glass. "Speaking of which, I have something to tell you." Her stomach dropped. "Oh?" "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations. The board's been after me to take a sabbatical since Linda died. I think it's time." "Oh." She tried to process what this meant. "When?" "Next month. I'll still be involved with special projects, but I need distance, perspective, time to figure out who I am when I'm not running a company. That's good. Healthy." The words felt hollow. He was leaving. Just when she'd started to imagine possibilities, he was walking away. "Sophia," he touched her arm gently, "I'm not going far, and when I come back, I won't be your boss anymore." The implication made her pulse race. "Alexander, I know we said when it's right. I'm trying to make it right." His eyes held hers. "The question is, will you wait for me, the way I'm waiting for you?" "You know I will." "Then we have time." He raised his glass. "To patience, to healing, to whatever comes next." They toasted, and Sophia felt hope bloom in her chest. Around them the gala swirled on, a celebration of technology and possibility. But for her, it was a celebration of something more, of second chances, of love that grew slowly, built on foundation of respect and shared purpose, of futures that began with a desperate sign across a crowded restaurant. The months that followed tested their patience. Alexander traveled, finding himself in mountains and meditation retreats, sending her postcards from places she'd only dreamed of visiting. Sophia threw herself into the work, expanding the project, finishing her degree, becoming the expert Alexander had always seen in her. They texted, called, shared pieces of their days across distances, but they kept their promise, nothing more until the time was right. "I miss you," he admitted one night, calling from somewhere in Tibet. "I miss you too." She was in her new apartment, bigger, brighter, bought with her new salary. "But this is good, important. I know. I'm becoming someone Linda would recognize again. Someone I recognize." A pause. "Someone worthy of you." "You were always worthy. You just couldn't see it." "Maybe, but I can see it now. See a lot of things now." 6 months after he'd left, Sophia got a text. "I'm home. Can we talk?" They met at a small cafe, neutral ground. He looked different, lighter somehow, the grief no longer a weight on his shoulders, but a part of him, integrated and accepted. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi." They stared at each other, 6 months of careful distance, suddenly feeling like a lifetime. "So," she said finally, "how was finding yourself?" "Exhausting, necessary, illuminating." He leaned forward. "I learned something important." "What's that?" "That I wasn't just grieving Linda. I was grieving the man I'd been with her. I had to figure out who I was without her so I could be someone with you." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "If you'll have me." "Alexander, I'm not your boss. We're not broken in the same ways anymore. We're just two people who found each other in the strangest way possible. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I love you, Sophia. Not because you saved my life. Not because you helped me heal. But because you're brilliant and kind and brave, and you see the world in a way that makes me want to see it too. I love you too. The words came easily. Truth long acknowledged, finally spoken. But... Relationships are hard. We both have history, baggage. This won't be a fairy tale. I don't want a fairy tale. His grip tightened. I want real. I want complicated. I want Sunday mornings and difficult conversations and building something together. I want you. She thought of Tommy, of the signs he'd taught her, of the way love could transcend words. Pulling her hand free, she signed the words she'd been holding back. I love you. I choose you. Always. Alexander's eyes widened. You've been practicing. So have you. She'd noticed his improved fluency in their video calls. I wanted to be able to speak your language, all of them. They sat there, hands linked across the table, two souls who'd found each other through tragedy and courage. Around them, life bustled on, people rushing, talking, living their own stories, but in their small bubble, time slowed. So what happens now? Sophia asked. Now? Alexander smiled, the expression transforming his face. Now we write the next chapter. Together. I like the sound of that. They left the cafe hand in hand, stepping into a future neither had imagined that night at the restaurant. The city stretched before them, full of possibility and promise. Later, much later, when people asked how they met, they'd share the story of a waitress who saved a CEO's life with sign language. But privately, they knew the truth was bigger than that. They'd saved each other, from grief, from isolation, from lives half-lived. Love, they'd learned, wasn't always instant or easy. Sometimes it grew slowly, built on a foundation of respect and shared purpose. Sometimes it required patience and distance and the courage to heal separately before coming together. But when it was real, when it was worth fighting for, love found a way. As they walked through the city that had brought them together, Sophia thought of Tommy. Somewhere she was sure he was smiling. His legacy lived on, not just in the technology they'd created, but in the love that had grown from loss. Thank you, she whispered to the sky. For what? Alexander asked. For everything. For the broken road that led here. He squeezed her hand. Thank you for being brave enough to take it with me. And in that moment, with the future stretching bright before them, Sophia knew that every painful step had been worth it. Every loss had led to this love. Every ending had been a new beginning in disguise. The waitress and the CEO, an unlikely pair brought together by danger and kept together by choice. Their story was just beginning, but already it was one worth telling, of courage and connection, of healing and hope, of love that bloomed in the most unexpected places. Sometimes, the most beautiful love stories begin with 3 simple words signed across a crowded room. Don't drink. Danger. But theirs began with something more, with the choice to act when action mattered, with the courage to trust a stranger, with the patience to heal before reaching for happiness. And as they disappeared into the crowd, 2 hearts beating as one, the city seemed to pulse with approval. Another love story written in its streets. Another reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary things happen when we simply choose to care. 1 year later, the Lily and Tommy Cross Foundation hosted its first annual gala. The name had been Sophia's idea, joining their lost loved ones in a legacy of service. The ballroom sparkled with light and purpose, filled with families whose lives had been changed by the technology they'd developed. Sophia stood at the podium, no longer the uncertain waitress but a confident advocate, preparing to address the crowd. In the audience, Alexander watched with pride, his eyes never leaving her face. "1.5 years ago," she began, "I was a waitress who caught something shocking, a moment of danger that changed everything. But the real shock came after, when I discovered that tragedy could become purpose, that loss could become love, that the worst moments of our lives can lead to the best. She found Alexander's face in the crowd, drawing strength from his smile. This foundation exists because two people who lost everything found each other, because a CEO remembered how to care and a waitress remembered how to hope. Because sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be, even when it feels like the wrong place. The audience was silent, captivated. In the front row, Mrs. Chen wiped tears from her eyes. Every person in this room has a story of loss, of moments when words failed, when connection seemed impossible. But we're here to say that no voice should go unheard. No warning should go unheeded. No person should feel invisible. She paused, her hand moving to the simple gold band on her finger. They'd married quietly 6 months ago, surrounded by the team that had become family. My brother Tommy taught me that love speaks in many languages. My husband Alexander taught me that love can grow from the most unlikely beginnings. Together we've learned that the greatest gift we can give is to truly see each other, to pay attention, to act when action matters. The applause was thunderous, but Sophia only had eyes for Alexander as he made his way to the stage. He took her hand, and together they faced the crowd, partners in every sense. "None of this would exist without Sophia," Alexander said, his voice carrying across the room. "She saved my life, but more than that, she saved my soul. She reminded me that wealth means nothing if it's not used to lift others, that success is empty if it's not shared, that love, real love, is worth waiting for, fighting for, building a life around." As they stood together, hands clasped, Sophia thought about the journey that had brought them here. The stormy night when she'd chosen courage over comfort, the months of patient building, first trust, then friendship, then love. The quiet wedding where they'd signed their vows as they spoke them, honoring both their languages. The work that continued to grow, touching lives across the world. "Before we continue with the evening," Alexander said, a smile playing at his lips, "Sophia has something she'd like to share." She felt her cheeks warm but stepped forward. "We've been keeping a secret. Well, trying to. But tonight feels like the right time to share that the Foundation will be expanding its mission next year to include prenatal and early childhood development programs. We want to ensure that every child, regardless of ability, has access to communication tools from the very beginning." "Which will be perfect timing," Alexander added, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach, "since we'll be needing those resources ourselves come spring." The room erupted in celebration. Mrs. Chen was openly crying now, and even James, standing near the back, wiped at his eyes. Their child would grow up bilingual in spoken and signed language, surrounded by a community that understood that different didn't mean less than. Later, as the gala wound down, they escaped to the same roof garden where they'd first almost kissed. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling with promise. "No regrets?" Alexander asked, pulling her close. "None. You?" "Only that it took us so long to find each other. Maybe we found each other exactly when we were meant to." She leaned into his warmth. "When we were ready to build something real." "I love you, Sophia Cross." "I love you too, Alexander Cross." They stood there, two souls who'd been shattered and remade, who'd found in each other not just love, but purpose. Below them, the city hummed with life. Millions of stories unfolding, connections being made, lives being saved in ways small and large. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Sophia said softly. "What's that?" "If my car hadn't broken down, if I hadn't taken that shift, if Richard hadn't chosen that night, if you hadn't understood sign language, so many moments that had to align perfectly for us to be here. Linda would have called it fate. Tommy would have called it luck. What do you call it?" Sophia turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd become her whole world. "I call it life. Messy, painful, beautiful life that sometimes gives us exactly what we need, exactly when we need it. Even when it doesn't feel like it at the time. Especially then." They kissed there in their garden, with the stars as witnesses and the city as their backdrop. Two hearts that had learned to beat again, together. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to remember that love can bloom from the darkest moments. Like and subscribe for more stories of hope, healing, and unexpected love. And remember, sometimes the most important messages don't need words. Sometimes all it takes is someone willing to see, to understand, to act. Until next time, keep your hearts open to unexpected possibilities. As they made their way back to the gala, hand in hand, Sophia felt Tommy's presence like a warm breeze. She'd saved a life with the language he'd taught her. She'd found love in the aftermath of loss. She'd built something beautiful from the ashes of grief. "Thank you," she whispered again, knowing somehow he heard. And in the ballroom full of light and laughter, where deaf and hearing communities mingled freely, where technology bridged gaps that had seemed insurmountable, where love had triumphed over loss, the waitress who'd saved a CEO smiled. Their story had begun with danger and silence. It would continue with joy and song, both spoken and signed, a symphony of connection that proved love truly did speak all languages. The wrong door had become the right one. The worst night had led to the best life. And two broken hearts had learned to beat as one, stronger for having been shattered, beautiful in their imperfect perfection. In the end, that's what love was. Not a fairy tale, but a choice, made again and again, to see the best in each other, to build something lasting, to turn tragedy into triumph. And as Sophia and Alexander Cross faced their future together, with a baby on the way, a foundation changing lives, and a love that had been worth waiting for, they knew the best chapters were still to come. The waitress had saved the CEO, but in the end, they'd saved each other, and that made all the difference. The spring arrived with cherry blossoms and new beginnings. Sophia stood in the nursery they'd prepared, one hand on her growing belly, the other adjusting the mobile that hung over the crib. Tiny hands spelling out love in sign language, a gift from Mrs. Chen. "She's going to be perfect," Alexander said from the doorway, watching her with the soft expression she'd come to cherish. Or he, Sophia reminded him. They'd chosen not to find out, wanting one more surprise in a life that had already held so many. Either way, perfect. He crossed to her, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Just like their mother. Through the window she could see the building that housed the foundation, its windows glowing with purpose. In just 18 months, they'd helped thousands of families. The technology had evolved, the programs had expanded, and the ripple effects continued to spread. "I've been thinking," she said, leaning back against him. "Dangerous," she elbowed him gently. "About Richard." Alexander tensed. Richard was serving a reduced sentence after cooperating with authorities, his attempted murder charge pleaded down. They hadn't spoken of him in months. "What about him?" "He wrote to me, from prison, asking for forgiveness." "Sophia, I want to forgive him." She turned in his arms. "Not for him, for us, for our child. I don't want to carry that anger anymore." Alexander studied her face, then nodded slowly. "You're right, you're always right." He kissed her forehead. "Linda used to say that holding on to anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die." Smart woman. I married another one. They stood there in the nursery, surrounded by hope and possibility. The past had shaped them but no longer defined them. They'd learned to carry their ghosts lightly, with gratitude rather than grief. 3 weeks later, Sophia gave birth to a daughter. They named her Hope, for what she represented, for what had brought them together, for what they wanted to give the world. As Alexander held his daughter for the first time, tears streaming down his face, he whispered, "Thank you for saving me." "We saved each other," Sophia murmured, exhausted but radiant. "No." He looked at her with infinite tenderness. "You saved me first. That night at the restaurant. Every day since, and now this—" He gazed down at Hope, who'd inherited his dark hair and her mother's expressive eyes. "You've given me everything." The door opened quietly, and a nurse peeked in. "There's someone here who says he's family. James." "Send him in," Alexander said warmly. James entered carrying an enormous teddy bear and looking uncharacteristically emotional. "She's beautiful," he said, his voice rough. "Just like her mother. Would you like to hold her?" "I couldn't." "Your family," Sophia said firmly. "Of course you can." As James carefully cradled Hope, cooing at her in wonder, Sophia and Alexander shared a look of perfect understanding. Family wasn't just blood. It was choice. It was showing up. It was the driver who'd become a grandfather, the restaurant manager who'd become a sister, the teacher who'd become a guide. "Oh," James said suddenly, "Elena's in the waiting room with half the restaurant staff, and Mrs. Chen, and what looks like most of your foundation team. Should I—" "Send them all in," Sophia laughed. "Hope should meet her village." The room filled with love and laughter, with signed conversations and spoken ones, with people whose lives had intersected in the most unexpected ways. Elena cried over the baby. Mrs. Chen signed a blessing. The foundation team took turns holding Hope, each promising to teach her something special. "This," Alexander whispered to Sophia, as they watched their makeshift family celebrate their daughter. "This is what you gave me, not just love, community, purpose, life." "We gave each other," she corrected, then yawned widely. "Rest," he said, kissing her gently. "I've got her. I've got everything." As Sophia drifted off to sleep, surrounded by the gentle chaos of love, she thought one last time of that stormy night, of the choice to knock on a stranger's door, of the split-second decision to sign a warning across a crowded restaurant. Every choice had led here, to this room full of joy, this life full of purpose, this love that had transformed two broken people into something whole and beautiful. 5 years later, Hope Cross stood on a stage, 5 years old and fearless, signing the national anthem at the Foundation's annual gala. She'd inherited her mother's courage and her father's determination, along with a gift for bringing people together. "That's our girl," Alexander murmured, his hand finding Sophia's. "She's amazing," Sophia agreed, then winced. "Another kick? Your son is going to be a soccer player." They'd found out this time. A boy, due in 2 months. "Tommy would be a good name," Alexander said softly. "Thomas Alexander Cross." Sophia had been thinking the same thing. Tommy for short. On stage, Hope finished signing with a flourish, beaming as the audience erupted in applause. She ran to them, launching herself into Alexander's arms. Did you see? I didn't forget any parts." "You were perfect, sweetheart," Sophia said, smoothing her daughter's dark hair. "Can I tell them the story now, about how you and Daddy met?" It had become Hope's favorite bedtime story, the waitress who saved the CEO, the love that grew from courage. "Maybe when you're older," Alexander said. "It's a long story." "But it has a happy ending," Hope insisted. "The best stories always do." Looking around the ballroom, at the families they'd helped, the lives they'd changed, the love they'd built, Sophia couldn't argue. Their story had been unexpected, sometimes painful, filled with loss and fear and uncertainty. But Hope was right. The best stories, the ones worth telling, always found their way to happiness. Not the easy happiness of fairy tales, but the hard-won joy of real life. The happiness of second chances and chosen families. Of purpose found in pain and love discovered in loss. "Yes," she told her daughter, pulling her close, "it has the happiest ending of all." And there, surrounded by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by a moment of courage in a restaurant, the Cross family stood together, complete, whole. Proof that sometimes the most beautiful destinations begin with the wrong turn, the unexpected detour, the door we never meant to knock on. The waitress had saved the CEO. The CEO had saved the waitress. Together they'd saved countless others. But most importantly, they'd learned that love, real, lasting, transformative love, was always worth the risk. Always worth the wait. Always worth fighting for. And as Hope signed "I love you" to her parents, her hands moving with the fluid grace of a child raised in 2 languages, Sophia knew that every moment had been leading here. To this. To them. To love. The end was really just another beginning. And their story, the story of a waitress, a CEO, and the 3 words that changed everything, would ripple outward for generations to come. A reminder that heroes come in all forms, that love speaks all languages, and that sometimes the most important thing we can do is simply pay attention. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that love can bloom in the darkest moments. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories of hope and unexpected love. Remember, your moment of courage could change someone's life forever. Until next time, keep your hearts open and your eyes watchful. You never know when you might be someone's miracle.